enormous flood on a nation that had persecuted his prophet for years. A nation that hadn't changed their minds about their denial for such a long time. This would become a story to be told as an example to future generations. According to the Bible, all of Noah's sons were on the ship, but the Qur'an says one of his sons didn't board the ark because he didn't believe in Noah. In the Qur'an, he is not mentioned by name, but the account between him and Noah is described like this. And so the ark sailed with them through waves like mountains, and Noah called out to his son, who was apart from them, "Oh, my dear son, come aboard with us, and do not be with the disbelievers." But he said, "I will take refuge on a mountain to protect me from the water." Noah said, "There's no protector today from the decree of Allah, except for whom He gives mercy." And the waves came between them, and he was among the drowned. Imagine a father in that situation. And he doesn't just say, "My son," he says, "My dear son." He shows extra love and compassion towards him. On top of all the hardships he had gone through, he now witnesses this behavior from his son, and then sees him drowning. Imagine how devastating it might be for Noah. As the storm in the skies was getting stronger and stronger, the vessel of survival for the people on board was able to resist the mountainous waves by the grace of Allah. As the leader of the ark that is full of believers, Noah continued to fulfill his duty despite the ongoing storms. The flood lasted for days. Each day they spent on the ship's rocking deck tested the patience of the believers. Although they were physically and spiritually exhausted during this long wait, their faith gave them the strength to endure and carry on. Finally, the sky brightened up and the great fury of the flood calmed down. Allah placed the ark safely on the peak of a mountain. In the Quran, this moment is described as, "And it was said, O earth, swallow your water, and O sky, withhold your rain. And the water subsided, and the matter was accomplished. And it came to rest on the mountain of Judi. And it was said, away with the wrongdoing people." And what the Bible says about that is, the water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the water had gone down, and on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. But did this flood cover the entire earth, or did it affect only a certain area? While the Bible clearly states that it covered the entire earth, the Quran left it ambiguous. Among the scholars of tafsir of the Quran, some have interpreted that to be a general flood on the earth, and others have said that it was a regional event. But when what we're talking about is the creator of the heavens and the earth and one of his greatest miracles, it makes no difference how much area was affected. Because for God, who has infinite power, it is equally easy to do both. What we should be focusing on are the messages that are given in the story. The events after the ark landed on the mountain are described in the Bible like this. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done." If you remember, in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis, it was told that God regretted having created the human beings and therefore decided to destroy them. And here in chapter 8, it seems like God decided to bring the flood in a moment of anger. When it was all over, he was calmed down by a nice smell and realized that what he had done was wrong. Feeling regret, acting impulsively in anger, making mistakes, how can such things be thought about God? Another surprising biblical narrative is in chapter 9, which says, "Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backward and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked." To summarize what's going on here, when one of Noah's sons, Ham, tells his brothers to do something about their father's situation, they come and cover their father with a garment. But then something very shocking happens. Let's continue. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." He also said, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth." First of all, I want you to notice how inappropriate it is to accept things like drinking alcohol and becoming naked after getting drunk about a prophet of God. The second thing is, in this passage, it is apparently Ham who made the so-called mistake of telling his brothers, which is not really a mistake because it results in covering an embarrassing sin for his father. But strangely, the cursing is not directed at Ham, but rather at his son Canaan, who had nothing to do with the incident. It doesn't make sense that a prophet who is supposed to be a role model of justice would do such a thing, or that God would want to show this act as a good example in his revelation to humanity. But the worst part of it is the events that we witnessed in the Middle Ages related to this curse. Pay attention to the words. Cursed be Canaan. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Japheth. From the 15th century onwards, a belief spread that this curse is the cause of having black skin. This biblical passage was even used to justify the enslavement of black Africans. It sounds very hard to believe, but it's a historical fact. Gomes Ince de Zurara, a Portuguese historian, wrote that the enchained Africans he had seen were in such a wretched state because of the curse which after the deluge, meaning the great flood, Noah laid upon Ham, that his race should be subject to all the other races of the world. Even reading these things makes me feel uncomfortable. Or Alexander Crummell, who was an African-American pastor and an academic who was educated at Cambridge University, wrote in 1862, "Almost universal opinion in the Christian world held that the sufferings and the slavery of the black race were the consequence of the curse of Noah." Obviously, it is not directly mentioned in the biblical text that black skin color is because of this curse. And Christian clergy of today argue that this is a completely wrong interpretation. And we certainly cannot judge a religion based on the mistakes made by its followers. But the crucial point is what the religious text actually contains. Here, we are talking about the great prophet, Prophet Noah, who gave such a sincere and serious struggle for his nation. But what is described in the Bible about him is something that can never be expected of him. Islam, on the other hand, does not accept this kind of narrative or description for any prophet. Nor can Islam accept the idea that God would send this kind of revelation to humanity, a revelation that contains contradictions and inappropriate attributions. Remember the number of pairs of animals to be taken on the ark. In the book of Genesis, 2 different numbers were given. It's a contradiction. How can God make mistakes when sending revelation? Or some of the statements made about God in the biblical version of the story. God is portrayed as someone who regretted that he wasn't able to foresee certain things, or someone who couldn't control his anger, and after calming down, became regretful for what he had done. These descriptions can never be valid or appropriate for God, because he is free from all imperfections. But when we look at the Qur'an, we see that the story is told in an ideal way, free from any contradictions or inappropriate attributions. It has described Allah in a perfect way, in a way that befits His glory. So, in light of all this, wouldn't it be right to say that by sending the Qur'an, God has corrected the inaccurate narratives in the previous scriptures, such as we saw in this story, and told them in the most accurate way? Or can we not say that by sending the Qur'an, God has cleansed the Bible of the false beliefs that have been mixed into it over the centuries? The same Qur'an also corrected the false beliefs about Jesus that had been introduced to Christianity, and declared that he was not a deity, but rather one of the greatest prophets sent by Allah. We are all traveling in a certain direction on this enormous ship called the Earth, and our sea is this vast space. Throughout history, thousands of prophets like Noah have captained the people on this ship. And Jesus was also one of those captains. They all tried to guide people to the truth. But when the pure faith that Jesus originally brought was corrupted, this ship was handed over to its last captain. In light of all these comparisons, don't you also think that this final captain is Prophet Muhammad and the compass is the Holy Qur'an?